Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I am your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I am very excited to announce I have Andrew Coates with me. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited.
Good to see you, Jackson. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So starting out, Andrew, this is something I've been having a lot of my guests do recently, is just tell the audience and give everybody kind of a background as to how you got into fitness, how long you've been doing this, and kind of what your story has been like to get you to where you're at now.
All right. I've been coaching for 13 and a half years. I started this career later in life, theoretically. I was 32. I'm 46 now. And if you go back further, I grew up playing a lot of sports. My parents, I didn't even realize at the time how progressive and thoughtful my parents were about, giving me and my brothers healthy home cooked meals, how, they were getting us in sports a lot. We were involved in cross country skiing at a young age. Me and my brother played high school basketball together. We were really passionate about that. My mom was a teacher. And there would be other teachers who could coach. This is a rural northern Newfoundland community, tiny town where I grew up. And, but my mom she would stay. And because she was a teacher, she would stay around for an hour and a half or 2 hours so that we could just play basketball, even if we didn't have a coach. She had extra work to do. She would stick around just to make sure we had access to the gym, which was really cool. Really lucky that way. And so as I got into university, I got away from a lot of sports and, went and did a Bachelor of Commerce degree. So I don't have a degree in exercise science or nutrition. And I really have worked very hard to fill in those gaps along the way, through a 13-year career, endless studying and what have you. My laptop is literally propped up on my precision nutrition coaching books. That's just a really convenient size thing. I've done PM1 a couple times in the past. So I got really serious about the gym at 24. I remember getting really sick with a bad flu. I don't think I was eating well. I certainly wasn't active. I was at a university. I just felt shitty. So I said, enough of this crap. I dabbled in the gym, wasn't consistent up to that point. I finally said, enough's enough. 7 months later of just dedicated training 4 or 5 days a week, eating more home cooked meals, more protein, that sort of stuff. And I went from, I'm 6'2", so kind of a lanky 170 I'd gotten down to a pretty muscular 210 pounds. And that felt really good. So, it just became part of who I was. I ended up owning a nightclub, opening very much in the party scene in St. John's, Newfoundland, what I consider my hometown. And, got a little bit away from the consistency with this. And so there was conflicting worlds. I moved across country at 28, wanted to leave the old world behind. Found a bullshit job, did it for a few years, working in a casino, but got back into the gym, really dedicated. It just became a big part of my life again. And then I left that job and I'm still working out at the gym. And because I'd gotten introduced to one of the trainers, the trainer kept asking me, hey, you should come work here. You'd make a good trainer. I kept saying no. So ultimately I said yes. I had nothing else to do. This is a crazy story to start a career at 32, right? It's not the passionate 20-year-old coming out of university or a 2-year diploma going, hey, I want to, help people, right? I never would have envisioned. When I was in my late teens and 20s, the idea of a personal trainer wasn't even a pathway I even knew about. So it took hold. I got good at it fast. I got busy fast. I realized I really enjoyed it fast. And the job became a career, became a passion. I put my head down. I worked really hard in a commercial gym. I still very much had this idea. Okay, there are, your fitness authorities, your legendary figures in the industry, educators, public speakers, writers on T Nation, et cetera. I've been reading that stuff for a really long time. And then there's us, just a trainer on the gym floor. And I distinctly remember just not having any sort of conceptualization of how you could go from one to the other. And it's not that I craved that at all. It just, I was very aware of that, what I thought was a dichotomy. So along the way, after 6 years of commercial gym, went out on my own, just a toxic work environment. It had become, my clients followed me, thrived initially, great word of mouth, local reputation when it comes to business. And then I met a guy who became a very close friend of mine named Dean Guido, and he wanted to start a podcast together. So we started doing that. All right. Around the same time, I started traveling to fitness conferences. And I started meeting some of the industries, who's who and the everyday folks just like me on the same road. And those relationships just have become so incredible and valuable. It's just some of my closest friends, the grander scheme of things, that I met through my travels. And I kept showing up to these things and kept doing the podcast and deepening connections. And then I started writing for my website because my best friend made me a website so I could write, because I aspired to write. And I still wasn't imagining, I want to write for all these things one day. And then one day along the way, a major inflection point was I got Danny Sugar, who's one of the editors of T Nation, a longtime contributor on the podcast. And so because I was already writing for my website, and I worked very hard on the skill of writing. Over my shoulder, you can see books on writing. Mm-hmm. And so Danny had started diving into my media, and she turned around after a couple of weeks and was like, hey, would you consider coming to write for us at T Nation? I'm just like, holy shit. Dream come true. Couldn't imagine. So I put together some ideas. They liked the idea. Worked really hard on it, submission, they accepted it, and then just kept feeding them stuff. And they've come to trust me so much based on my reputation for writing and what I give them, that they want more than I can give them. And then doors open. Next thing you know, I've got Generation Iron in my inbox. Maybe it's a year later, trying to, want me to come write for them, for True Coach early in my career. And that led to writing for the Personal Trainer Development Center and Muscle Fitness and Men's Health and Barbell and Kabuki Strength. And then through connections to the industry, wrote for Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter. My friend Luca Hosvar's had me write for his Vigor Ground Fitness website. And I'm working on something new that will be revealed. Pretty big publication, probably around May when it's published. So I don't reveal until they're official. Yeah. And along the way, I decided, all right, I need to have a social media presence. So 4.5 years ago, I started posting regularly to Instagram, and that just gained traction very slowly. And I built up, and now that's kind of a monster. And through all these things and through traveling and relationships, I started getting invitations to public speaking events, which again exploded. So then there's been a ton of that. It's crazy to look at all this stuff, because at the end of the day, I'm still that full-time in-person everyday trainer on the gym floor. It's just, I've made this my life about all this stuff, and I'm very fulfilled by it. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's, definitely not the typical way to get into fitness. So and get into this line of work, especially with as much writing as you do, that's not having a formal education in the subject and writing as much as you do is very uncommon. So yeah, appreciate you sharing that.
I mean, there's something else here too. You gain education by doing, right? Yeah. And I think there are areas for example, it's not like not like the show Suits. You need a law degree in order to practice law. You need a medical license and medical school in order to practice medicine, unlike some of the people making all sorts of absurd claims on social media. Engineering degree, architectural stuff, that sort of stuff. You need very, very formal curriculum-based educations. And I the utmost respect for people who go and they have exercise science degrees or, degrees in nutritional science, right? PhDs especially.
Sure.
But one of the great things about a lot of those people is through their writing, through their videos, you get Lane Norton. I got into Lane's video logs early, and a lot of the nutrition stuff there. I got into precision nutrition early, and a lot of Renaissance periodization stuff, amongst many other great resources. And so you end up being able to surgically take courses, certifications, and go right to the resources that allow you to turn around and apply that stuff and practice and what have you. And it's not to say that it's the same thing, but you get over, I think I'm somewhere north of 23,000 coaching hours on the gym floor, endless study, endless learning, absorbing coursework and what have you. And, I'll be careful how I say this, but it more than comfortably becomes the equivalent of the, almost like a master's level education. I won't say degree, but education in exercise science, in coaching, in personal training. And there's also all the business dimensions too. Again, Bachelor of Commerce in Business, and I continue to study that sort of stuff. So there's not only one single way to gain an education in this realm, or many other things that are learnable through surgically going in and getting those resources. And a lot of entrepreneurial ventures and a lot of coaching-based ventures, you can acquire these skills. I think you're still better off going to the people who have those formal educations who are teaching them. And you can basically design your own curriculum as you go. And it's tricky. Most of the highly educated people in the industry that we know, I think, are just brilliant. You get, again, you get an exercise science PhD like a Dr. Mike Isertel, right? Really, really brilliant dude. But then, you get guys like, I use Luca Hosfar as an example. I mean, I don't recall, Luca doesn't have an advanced degree or a degree in exercise science and nutrition. Now, Luca's also a voracious sponge learner, and he's great with his media. He's one of the best people at, he learns something and he goes and turns around and he like applies it on a social media, he documents it, teaches it to other people, whether it's podcast or YouTube, and his YouTube crushes. So I would put Luca's knowledge base, skill base up against most of the people with master's level educations in exercise science and coaching. And, I think he's one of the best in the business and leading by example and has done very well. Although they're the minority, there are a handful of people who have, PhD level educations. And quite frankly, they're grifters and charlatans. I won't name names, but I have I have a lot of different aspects of social media. I have a Facebook group for one of my programs. And one of the other members posted up a video of an individual who has a PhD who I just leave alone. I'm not interested in callouts, but I do not respect this individual as an authority in fitness. And I think that this person puts on a lot of performative circus style stuff. Anyway, so this particular individual really liked this person was sort of like sharing in front of everybody else. And I got to be careful and nuanced and not bruise egos, but it's like, this is not someone that I endorse nor feel is in our industry doesn't respect that individual. So usually those people are well known. Usually it's more a case of you get medical professionals who step outside their scope and then they start talking extensively about nutrition. I will say, like Dr. Jason Fung, he's a Canadian nephrologist, a kidney specialist, who became a guru about fasting and has written books on the subject. It's a really good way to cash in and make a lot of money and basically become a complete charlatan. And people like Lane Norton and others have repeatedly called out Jason or Gary Brecka or, I don't even know what Brecka's educational credentials are. I know he's some sort of criminal at some point in his life. And he's somehow become this like wellness guru. It's just like, holy shit. Or a David Asprey, again, someone else with no education this time. And Lane was poking fun at him recently because one of the many things that Asprey gets on with is the fact that he's injected his own urine. And at a certain point, I have to trust that your sensible person is just going to have enough of a filter for what's bullshit and what isn't. But again, these people, they make claims that get people excited. They're extreme. The counterpoint to what I just sort of alluding to is you have the Liver King, right? Us fitness professionals, we look at the Liver King and we're like, how on fucking earth would any complete fucking moron ever fall for this kind of nonsense with this guy that looks like a badly sunburned pro wrestler meets caveman who you can smell through the video screen, right? I think he's even open up, but I think he maybe bathes once a week or whatever. And quite frankly, he looks terrible. I'm sorry, like that's an ad hominem attack. It's like, personally, the guy looks fucking terrible. And he's claiming that this is all consuming organ meat and bull testicles, right? It's just like, at what point? But then we stop and we go, well, tons of people are like soaking this up. And then we become the ones who are out of touch with the frustration and the curse of knowledge where we know all these things, but a lot of your average everyday people are really confused by all the crazy and misleading claims by a medical professional who's saying that fasting is this magical thing and calories in, calories out doesn't matter, right? Yeah. And so we have to remember that we can't lose sight of what the everyday person thinks. Like, and we could look at this guy and be like, oh, it's obvious this fucker's on steroids, right? But listen, I'm one of those kids that grew up and we thought wrestling was real. Then all of a sudden you find out that all your wrestlers are on steroids. Oh my God. In retrospect, you're like, oh my God, Scott Steiner, big Papa Pump with like his chainmail, like shoulder and headgear. Oh, he's not natural. Okay, cool. Kind of makes sense, right? Or like, your baseball iconic players. Oh, those guys are juiced up. Oh my God. And at a certain point, I'm like, I don't care. I like big, like swinging home run type stuff in baseball. Yeah. Or movie stars, God forbid, movie actors like Sylvester Stallone gets caught with human growth hormone into Australia, I think some years ago. It's like, what? He's not natural? Oh my God. Like Arnold was a competitive bodybuilder, so at least Arnold has sort of admitted that more or less. So but we're the ones oftentimes who get out of touch with what the everyday person, I mean, there's lots of everyday people who just look at this shit and go like, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's nonsense. Yeah. But a lot of people are just like, oh my God, I should eat carnivore. I should, eat all these things. I should eat organ meat. I should go out in the sun. I should sun my butthole, right? Like there are grifters who are on these particular things. Like sunning their butthole is somehow part of their branding.
Well,
I actually have a theory. I'm totally side question. I have a theory that we actually like something in about 2012 happened, and either one of two things. The world literally ended. Okay, the world ended, and we have been living through the apocalypse because none of this shit makes any sense since about 2012, right? I think it's about 14 years now of just complete batshittery that I look every single day, the stuff that's going on in the world, and I'm just like, I'm taking crazy pills in every regard. Or we're living in a Matrix style simulation. And part of me, as much as I'm joking, part of me goes, I think it's plausible either one of those scenarios. I'm going to sound like a complete crackpot here. And I am being mostly humorous, but sometimes you just wonder, given how fucking insane everything is. You get people walking through grocery store aisles going, this food is shit, this is shit, this is shit, don't eat this shit. It's like, oatmeal is somehow bad. Listen, I've been eating oatmeal since I was a kid. I was lucky that my parents would cook oatmeal for breakfast each morning, and we could have like breakfast cereal on the weekends. Or like spinach. How the fuck did spinach become like unhealthy? Like this stuff is crazy.
This is a bodybuilder's, vegetable of choice to some degree. That and broccoli.
I mean, like, listen, the bodybuilders didn't always have it right. Lord knows they came up with a lot of kooky stuff.
But like people who were at the pinnacle of health, or at least the pinnacle of fitness, we won't necessarily say health.
I'm going to wheel you back on that one because bodybuilders are the furthest things from the pinnacle of health. And I write for Generation Iron. If you follow their page, which I actually don't know if I recommend that. Every second post is this bodybuilder died at like this age, and you're just like, I wonder what's going on here, right? That shit gets extreme, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So outside of the weight cuts, that can get pretty extreme, which is really, competition prep. The closer you get to competition, we all know that's where things get the most unhealthy. Yeah. And I, just recently recorded a podcast with, Russell Moore, who has competed before, placed in a competition, but he's local to me. He's Virginia. But we had a good conversation about that. But what we're talking about, what you're just talking about actually leads me into a question that I did want to ask you, which is, of the things that the general public misunderstands, like what are things that you find yourself correcting in clients, within, we'll say, the last few years, that you think are valuable things for people to know that are misunderstood?
It's a tricky one. I'm going to take this in a couple directions.
Sure.
One is I think that a lot of the people that jump onto my social media or self-select, this is self-selection bias, to work with me are the sort of people that are already kind of drinking the Kool-Aid on the what I think is the evidence-based health and wellness side of things, right? And that doesn't mean that they have everything, but I find that there's no really there's not a lot of crazy shit. No one's kind of be like, hey, I'm a carnivore person, blah, 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 like that sort of stuff. Or I love the Liver King. I eat like the Liver King. But I work with, I don't want to shit on keto, but, I've worked with a few keto devotees, and sometimes they just have they get, sometimes they get a little evangelical because they want to reinforce their belief in something. I find keto people tend to be evangelical where they want to preach it to everybody else to convert them. So that way it substantiates their own insecure belief in this thing that, probably isn't serving them very well, but you get the occasional person who likes it. Here's something I tell coaches. So this is the side quest. I got to remember how this is. You're going to get people come to you and they're going to have ideas or misconceptions. I'll use the word tone. And I have a post that I've repeatedly used because I see sometimes there are coaches that get on this pedantic. I hate pedantry when it comes to coaches, and they're condescending. And the way that they like to lecture people and lecture people on how stupid are you to believe this? It's like tone is not a thing. Blah, 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 blah. It's like you build muscle and you get leaner. It's like, listen, motherfucker, tone absolutely is a thing because we know what the fuck people mean when they say, hey, because most of the people that I've ever worked with in some way, shape, or form come to me and say, hey, I don't want to get too bulky. Sometimes you get the young guys I want to get super jacked. I want to look like Arnold. But most of the women are coming in and they're going, oh, I don't want to put on too much muscle. I just want to tone up. Right? I want to lose some weight. And I don't sit there and go, well, actually, tone is not a thing. You coaches, you guys doing this shit, you got to knock this crap off. Someone tells you something, right? And it's their understanding of how it works. It's their way of communicating. It's the way that the general population understands things. And we come in and you get someone can say like, well, muscle hypertrophy. It's like no one knows outside of us knows what the word hypertrophy even fucking means, right? So it's like, knock that shit off. Stop going right to like lecture people on why they're wrong and how smart you are. Ask them questions. Look, if someone says to me, hey, I want to tone up, I'm like, cool, done. All right. I know exactly what you mean. That's literally what I'll say. I know exactly, because I know exactly what they mean. I don't need to correct them.
Right.
I don't need to re-educate them. And every time I do this post, everybody loves it. And then every once in a while, someone's like, no, misinformation. Like, how the fuck is letting someone, what does tone mean? It means the greater appearance of muscle, right? So what do?
Yeah.
We build some muscle and we help them stay lean. That's fucking muscle tone, right? That's not even misinformation.
Right.
But these elitist jackasses come in there. No, we gotta fix it. No, you're just an insecure jackass who needs to like lecture people and show how much knowledge you have. Fuck that shit. Be really empathetic when it comes to what someone is dealing with. It is challenging enough to admit, hey, I don't know how to do something. I need some help. Step into a gym, some of whom, gyms are fine, some of whom are absolutely scared batshit over the idea of what they built up in their minds gyms to be. Took a lot for them to step in, and you immediately embarrass them, make them feel stupid. They're never going to come back. And they're going to fall for someone else's marketing bullshit who doesn't have your level of integrity or knowledge. So, coaches, knock this fucking shit off, seriously. And listen and ask questions. And don't always go into advice mode and go, oh, I got the answer to that. Let me display how smart I am. It's like, no. Most people understand and know the fundamentals of this, okay? Be the guide, ask the questions, lead them to conclusions, let them make decisions for themselves. They're going to be much more likely to execute on those decisions. And make the experience something that is really special for them. And along the way, and you'll be able to, like, without even correcting tone, be like, okay, cool. Here's how we build muscle. Here's how nutrition works to get you lean. It's not all cardio. Got to dial in the nutrition a little bit, and then make them really enjoy it. And all of a sudden, instead of worrying about the definition of tone, all of a sudden this person's like, hey, I like how I look at the mirror. Can we get more jacked? I want to be strong. They love being strong, right? So you just create this incredible experience for them. And so to go back to the original essence of the question, yeah, sometimes along the way there's some goofy things. And if they trust you, they're going to ask. And there's a wild assortment and nothing's really springing to mind. But then it becomes a fun discussion. And again, use empathy with evidence-based practice. And you've gotten to the point where they just they're interested in learning about this. They're asking in such a way that they're expecting you to like teach them a little bit about it. So then there's no danger in, embarrassing them because you're telling them they're wrong. They're just like, okay, cool. I heard this. All right, here we go. Let me explain what's going on there. Here's why people say that. It's like, let's say someone's asking about intermittent fasting. Every once in a while I get this, right? And they'll be like, hey, so how does intermittent fasting work? And so I'll explain. It's like usually people have a window where they don't eat. And here's a window where they eat a lot. And one of the things I'll explain is the proponents of intermittent fasting will sometimes make claims that there are special benefits, health benefits, fat loss benefits, over and above the fact that it's not a bad tool for calorie restricting. And I'll say those claims are false. Usually those people are kind of branding around it. They got some sort of like stake in it. But it can be a useful tool for some people if it fits, if your energy levels are good, if it fits your like kind of work schedule and you like it. And I've worked with people who it works best for them. I try to encourage those people to add like some protein shake or something in the fasted window, just because more spread out protein is going to be better for maintaining muscle mass. And I'll explain to them, if the goal is explicitly to put on a lot of muscle, intermittent fasting is not a very good strategy. Can it be good for for fat loss? Yeah, actually supports that fairly well. But it's not special. It's a tool. And so if I can make sure that the person understands, validate what could be beneficial about something versus, what's generally like falsely claimed about something. The same thing goes for keto. And if you get into stuff like carnivore or some of the other like more batshit weird stuff, if anybody remembers a snake diet, I've actually met that guy, the snake diet guy. He's a sniveling little weasel. He's local to me. Anyway, so side tangent right there. I think he's kind of quieted down. There's a lot of buzz about that a few years ago. Just Google it. It's terrifying.
Oh, well, I was told to go on it when I found out I had all these like gut sensitivities. And it was, not a good idea.
So here, let's talk about this. So I know people who've gone into more carnivore style dieting. One of those individuals was a really, really difficult person in my life, but I know other people who've gone into it. But what happens is we have people with complex and hard to diagnose gut sensitivity issues, You know, a lot of the stuff that tends to get the catch-all of IBS tends to get thrown at it.
Oh my
Sometimes we're dealing
gosh.
with
Yeah.
Crohn's, colitis, these sort of things, right?
Yes.
And a FODMAP insensitivity is kind of a big one,
Uh-huh.
which,
Yeah.
you know, for a while there, obviously everybody thought the gluten was the bad guy and everybody's celiac. And well, turns out statistically, celiac disease is very uncommon. But there
Right.
are other people who are non-celiac, gluten intolerant, different, just stuff bothers. But sometimes it's
Yeah.
not as simple as figuring out what the problem is. So you get people who just eliminate everything. So what is the carnivore diet? It's actually fairly hypoallergenic in this context, right? We're not talking
Hmm.
technical allergies. We sort of aren't. But like, what you've done is you strip down all of these different unknown, okay, whatever, like legume or like leafy green or fruit, mixed in all that crap, or whatever like processed additives in some of the foods that we're eating regularly is the thing that's pissing off your gut lining, right? So if you strip that down into just like a narrow assortment of meats and a few other things, well, guess what? You're probably going to feel better right away, because the irritant, which is mixed in with everything, you can't figure it out, is out of the picture. So therefore, it's like, oh, the faulty logic, oh, this must be better for us. No, it's just that we've stripped out whatever was pissing off your gastrointestinal tract. And so the smart thing would be to do that and then like add back in things
Right.
slowly. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, in goes the, oh, now we got problems again. Shit. Okay. Well, that's
Right.
probably what the problem is, or it's an ingredient in this. And if we can
Sure.
triage out that it's one thing, or like people who are FODMAP insensitive, and I can't do FODMAPs justice, but there's a whole big bunch of array of weird things
Yeah.
that can piss you know, cherries, right? Or of sugar alcohols, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Or I mean, for some people, it's like lactose, right? And obviously,
So
that's lactose.
I'll give you my family's is sulfur sensitivity,
Okay.
which is an interesting one to do. So for mine, it's for me personally, it's naturally occurring sulfur in things. So
Yeah.
eggs light me up.
Thanks. Yeah.
But then my sister, for her, it's man-made. So mostly for her, it's sulfites, which are mostly put in, a lot of different sauces and seasonings, but also in alcohol. So she figured it out through a violent reaction to alcohol.
Right. Okay. And for her especially, it could be really tricky to figure out, all right, what is the singular thing, or
Yeah.
what is the thing that's a common across these different things. So I
Right.
understand. This is why I don't go into like I'm having a bit of fun with carnivore, but I understand that like some people just simply feel better on it. Now, here's the challenge: they feel better now because we've eliminated whatever is pissing, making me feel rotten, right? But
Yeah.
then there's second, third order effects where, okay, we've eliminated fiber and a whole bunch of other, and then you get the carnivore devotees who are making the dangerously false claim that, oh, we don't need fiber. We're going to see like probably going to see rates of like colorectal cancer, which is a very dangerous cancer in the populations who are fucking around with carnivore for extended periods of time, probably go up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You're also, get into Spencer Nadolsky's stuff and his brother, Carl Nadolsky. They do a pretty good job on a lot of like the blood work side of things when it comes to these different dietary things. And so you see some really goofy blood work with people who are carnivore or like really, really low carb keto types. So you got to be really careful there, but you don't necessarily feel the effects that right away. So it makes sense why people feel better. And then, of course, they go back, they haven't figured out what's wrong, and they feel like shit again. So they go back to the thing that they feel better on. They're just kicking the can down the road, and we're looking at a pretty expensive bill on that can when the bill comes due. But we still have to be empathetic to the fact this person just feels like shit, and they're just looking for solutions. So it makes sense where like, unqualified grifters and charlatans are going to make these false claims about, things like, carnivore dieting, and make it sound like it's this panacea to all of your health problems.
Yeah.
It'll feel better in the short term for some of you, but there's going to be there'll be a toll later on down the road. It's going to potentially be a really nasty one. So, but you've got to have a great trusting relationship with the client to be able to communicate those things to them. And you can't just guns blazing right out the gates with
Right.
someone who's brand new to you and be like, oh, that's fucking stupid. No dice, right? So
Yeah.
I think there are so many different things that can pop up. But I think what is common to all this stuff is, especially as a coach, you have to just meet them where they're at, listen to them, understand what the real problem is, be empathetic. And then as you earn their trust, you can have the credibility to come back and go, all right, well, here's what the evidence says on this. Here's what you're hearing. Here's why this is valid. But here are some things that I should be really careful about. So that's how I approach this stuff. And I mean, there are rare exceptions. I can think of one client I had briefly who just had some really goofy ideas about some stuff and was just really difficult to deal with. So we amicably parted ways after 5 sessions just because
Yeah,
I'm not going to get into specifics, but it wasn't good.
sure.
She had actually gotten verbally abusive a couple of times, and I'm just like,
Mm,
okay, I can't. That's a line that I'm not comfortable crossing, right?
yeah,
Because I wasn't willing to validate the really goofy pseudoscience that she was really wrapped up in, and I
yeah,
still tried to be thoughtful and listen and patient, but that one crossed a line. But that's
yeah,
that's the rarity. You don't usually deal with that sort of stuff.
yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, it's building that relationship, over the time where you can speak into some of those things and, knowing your stuff, right? I think the biggest thing that I encounter, and really the biggest thing is when people get dialed in on, these tips or tricks or, even some of the like biohacking-esque stuff. Like a lot of it tends to just be like the last like 1%, that they're trying to get out of whatever they're doing, or they're trying to get, a quick, way to success, kind of shortcut, their way to success. I think a lot of the things that I end up talking to clients about and kind of educating them on it are those things. And really what it comes down to for me, for most of my clients, I won't say all of them, but for most of them is like, hey, let's get back to the basics. Can we eat, to the most part, as much as possible? Can we eat, whole foods? Can we eat, get protein, vegetables, at each meal? Can we, you know, lift
Liver and bull testicles.
regularly?
Liver and bull testicles. Sunlight.
Yeah. And move, just like move and eat well. And can we sleep, and going to all those different components and just saying, can we hit the big rocks first? And then we'll talk about the deep specifics, because at that point it's like, okay, we haven't mastered the basics yet, so let's first master the basics before we take a step up. For a lot of people, that's what I find myself answering those questions is like, hey, can we, let's, you haven't gotten to a consistent routine yet. Let's start there, and move upward. But yeah, I think, we're approaching the time that we want to be at. I really appreciate you hopping on. Just want to leave with this. Is there anything that you think would be valuable, just valuable for people to hear, if they're hearing you for the first time? Somebody's getting into fitness, and for my clientele, somebody who's over 50. I know you work with Larry, who's a big Instagram star these days. Yeah, what would you say to somebody who's just getting into it and really trying to do well for themselves?
The online space is rapidly getting more and more crowded with more and more extreme personalities, but also really charismatic or really thoughtful and very credible people with subtle differences of opinion. And you can get trapped in consuming as a emotionally soothing way of procrastinating from doing the thing, which is to actually like work on your nutrition, your training. I would go in and actually probably keep a fairly narrow array of fitness authorities that you're absorbing their information, that you feel confident about. Not overwhelm yourself too much. And everyone's going to leave room to like add someone to the mix if you feel good about it. But if you're following 300-400 fitness accounts, it's noise. And so,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not going to sit here and lecture you on like, oh, who's evidence based or who is it. If you're listening to this, then like some of the people that Jackson is putting on the podcast and sharing through your media are probably going to be the people you're endorsing. And then if the people listening like and trust you, they're going to feel good about that. So you're going to serve as a filter for those people. Great. Awesome. And then, you know what, I still think it's show up for yourself, straightforward plan and approach. There's no perfect plan. There's no optimal. There's just what keeps you consistent getting in and out of the door. And as you learn along the way, you can tweak things a little bit. And I think, like you said, nail the basics when it comes to nutrition. Get a little bit more sleep. Drink some more water. It's going to take you 90+% of the way. And if you consistently show up for yourself, you're going to do fine. Because everybody listening is probably going to have a complex array of individual questions that I could never possibly get into depth here.
Right.
If you do have questions, I respond to everything on my social media, and you might look at my following size and be very intimidated by it. I openly invite people. I respond to everything. You're probably going to get a nuanced voice message. So please, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask me. I find the messages in my hidden stuff all of the time. I check regularly, and I enjoy being able to answer those sort of things. So you will probably have those sort of questions. So you have an open invitation to reach out to me, and I can respond to everything. And I'm usually reasonably prompt. I'm probably not immediate, but there are probably a few messages waiting for me after this recording's over.
Yeah.
And I will get to them, and I will be there for my clients, and I respond to all of them. And I'm happy to also point you in the direction. Sometimes I may not have the best answer, but I may be able to direct you to a resource, whether it's a book, an authority, something else that I think is going to do a good job of adding context to or answering your questions. So please, by all means, my Instagram at Andrew Coates Fitness. You can, if you're a podcast lover, you can also check out my podcast, the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I've been a little bit less consistent with it recently, but there's over 300 lifetime episodes with a lot of great people. So a lot of industry authorities. So I think you'll enjoy it, especially for coaches. It's probably a little bit more coach than enthusiast, but enthusiasts will probably get a lot out of it too. So please, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. And one last thing, I do want to add this. For those of you listening, and Andrew, you may not know this, but it was your kind of advice and mentorship that really kind of gave me a kick in the pants about a year ago when I had my finger accident. And you told me to basically don't use it as an excuse, get moving. And today, actually, so the accident was a year ago. It'll be a year in 5 days. And today was the first time I've set a PR, since then, a lifetime PR since then. So back at it, was able to build up over the last almost 12 months. And so I just want to take this time, say thank you.
Listen, you never know the influence you're having, right? And I love stuff like that because at the end of the day, I kind of playfully laughed about some of the people who I will call grifters or charlatans. And I think we can be a little loose with those terms. I try not to be. But I love what we get to do as a career, right? I love this. I am not, transactional with it. It's not, hey, what's in it for me? I have been blessed. I have gotten incredible trappings of like authority and all invitations on podcasts and public speaking and all this sort of shit. It's fulfilling. I like it. But it's a product of just consistently putting my head down. A lot of stuff goes unseen, off social media. It's a lot of consistent work. It's a lot of showing up and supporting clients. A lot of it's showing up for myself, good boundaries on my own health promoting behaviors. And along the way, I've been able to attract eyeballs that have liked the way I do things. And those people have shared more and more of my stuff. It's gotten me in front of more people. And what does that do? It just scales my ability to take articles or podcasts or other resources and enrich people's lives. And you bloody never know. You literally never know where this sort of stuff's going to show up. There are celebrities that I follow, and all of a sudden, like, they're not following me, and all of a sudden, there's a girl that I follow. We've never interacted, and she keeps sharing my stuff. Doesn't follow me, and she's got like 3 million plus followers. And I send her a thank you message, and she never sees it, but she just keeps sharing my stuff. And like literally within the last hour, I saw that she shared something again. I'm just like, that's bloody cool, right?
Yeah.
She seems to like what I'm doing, even if she's not hitting the actual follow button. That's fine. That's irrelevant. Yeah. So yeah, it feels good, and I do it because it's fulfilling to see other people benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And for those listening, we'll see you guys next time.